The Aldis podcast is brought to you by Aldis International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our ServiceNow series, where we interview the best and brightest of the industry to share their story, advice, and views on the exciting world of ServiceNow and digital transformation.
Hello everybody, it's Mark Kelly here, Chief Customer Officer and co-founder of Aldis. I hope you're doing really well. Part of our ServiceNow series, I'm absolutely delighted to introduce you to John DeWysocki. If you haven't actually heard of John, let me give you a little bit of an overview about his experience. John is an enterprise management and automation leader with over 25 years of broad technical IT management experience from MSP startups to multinational firms, including Instinet, Merrill Lynch, ICAP, New York Times, and Honeywell. His most recent role was a director and lead architect at enterprise production management and automation at Barclays. John, thank you very much for joining us on today.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
John, I've given a little bit of an overview about your background. Could you go into a little bit more detail about your background and kind of timeline of journey, companies you've worked with? Because you've really worked with kind of a diverse set.
Yeah, definitely. Sure, Mark. Funny story. I was originally pursuing a computer science degree in college and had taken several OS and programming courses. Then one nice Saturday afternoon, while stuck in the computer lab finishing up an assignment, I looked around at everyone else in the lab and said to myself, I'm not one of these computer nerds, and immediately changed my major to management information systems to balance my degree with business courses. And at the time, I was putting myself through college, so I needed a decent paying job, and it just so happened to get one at IBM Research as, of all things, a Unix system administrator. Little did I know at the time that this was the start of a long and storied career in technology. My next role at Instinet, which was the first electronic interdealer broker, was building a brand new Unix network to replace their legacy platform. There, I gained tremendous experience creating a globally distributed Unix environment while helping developers port their back-end trading code. That was followed by Merrill Lynch, where I ran its global monitoring system, and then at ICAP, another interdealer broker, I was responsible for service and asset management, enterprise monitoring, and operations. Later, I joined TD Ameritrade, where I led the corporate ITSM, ITAM, enterprise monitoring, and automation services.
And tell us a little bit about your experience working on the ServiceNow platform.
So prior to 2011, Platform as a Service and ServiceNow were still fairly new, and quite honestly, I saw ServiceNow just as a more user-friendly, glorified web interface, which lacked the underlying functionality needed to compete with the more established platforms. But by the following year, I started seeing the advantages that ServiceNow's flexible foundational architecture had over those legacy platforms, and soon saw it as a legitimate and leading service management contender. So much so that when I was at the New York Times, I initiated plans to bring it in to replace the existing HP Service Desk tool. Now, BMC Remedy was too well established at TD Ameritrade, and there was no appetite to look at alternatives. But then Honeywell hired me because of my Remedy background, since they were on the verge of moving from Remedy to ServiceNow. There, I was accountable for the global migration of an on-prem Remedy solution to the ServiceNow platform, which was successfully delivered in 6 months, if you can believe that, and then nurtured in the subsequent years through numerous upgrades and improvements. Most recently, I was recruited into Barclays to design an enterprise production management transformative future state strategy to align and govern the different tactical plans within their technology organizations. My strategy and governance responsibilities included the ServiceNow platform, as well as numerous monitoring and automation tools and other related apps and services.
And when you look at the value that you believe ServiceNow adds to organizations, what do you believe are the kind of key areas there?
Yeah, well, ServiceNow has evolved into a very solid and flexible foundation for organizations to not only establish integrated ITIL-based ITSM, ITOM, and ITAM practices, but has also expanded into other related and interconnected areas such as HR and security. It's all about data and workflow automation, and ServiceNow enables organizations to provide a consistent source of truth and the ability to automate manual tasks with transparency, governance, and analytics for continuous improvement. Prior to ServiceNow, legacy platforms tended to architect themselves into a corner with their rigid foundations and their focus primarily residing with their largest customers' needs. This resulted in infrequent fixes, unnecessary improvements, and disconnected relationships. ServiceNow's flexible architecture, if kept aligned with out-of-the-box functionality, offers 2 major upgrades per year and much more timely fixes and improvements. ServiceNow is capable of regularly expanding its feature set well beyond just listening to its biggest customers, which makes all organizations feel seen and heard. In operations, you need to have an automate everything mindset, especially today, because there are just too many moving parts and too much data to keep up with. And any resistance to that only leads to increased risk to the organization and stagnated growth. ServiceNow provides the means, guidance, and tools to enable that journey, so we all can focus more on higher level operational advancements and activities that better support the business.
And when you take that into consideration, John, tell us about some of the challenges within your career using ServiceNow, and how did you manage the rollout of the implementation? And I suppose, how did you measure the success of this implementation?
Of course, there will always be technical challenges with implementing and running platforms like ServiceNow, but for the most part, they can eventually be overcome. It's been my experience that the real challenge tends to come from people. Employees and leadership can be very temperamental when it comes to change and innovation. Employees naturally tend to avoid anything that creates more seemingly unnecessary work for them, and leadership tends to avoid increasing any apparent risk and expense. So the whole process, from approval to implementation through maturation, can be very precarious. Getting everyone on board and cooperatively working towards a unified vision while navigating the bureaucracy, politics, and resource constraints is a persistent challenge that can derail any enterprise initiative at any time. So transparency, communication, and measurable iterative wins are essential. When it comes to measuring success, I basically use whatever means are available to me. The more overlapping reinforcement, the better. More specifically, though, for people, I would measure things like customer satisfaction and feedback, stakeholder engagement levels, leadership support, team health, and governance compliance. For the platform, there are integration of automation trends, request backlog volume and velocity, number of upgrades, skips, and of course, ROI. For process, obviously meeting SLAs and KPIs are critical. And finally, overall corporate buy-in to the strategy and vision, so everyone is working towards that North Star.
When you look at the future of ServiceNow and digital transformation, where do you see it going in the future?
Yeah, that's a great and very timely question. Currently, we're entering a new era of digital transformation with emerging technology that will bring rapid change and tremendous opportunities. So I think it's very important to start preparing people, process, data, and technology now for what is inevitably coming in the very near future. An important part of that preparation is realigning and reskilling an organization's ServiceNow teams to be more nimble and better positioned to support the platform through its growth and maturity, as automation replaces manual processes and workflows. ServiceNow teams need to move from a project to a product structure, or more specifically, to service as a product organizational models. So, for example, as incident, problem, and change management become automated utilities, staff should be reassigned to either ServiceNow product management support activities such as marketing, training, business process management, and customer success, or to higher level automation and integration development. Applying a service as a product org model to companies' ServiceNow teams helps them mature from reactive practices to proactive engagements and evolve from being platform and project focused to customer and product driven. Now, along with this prerequisite organizational change management, I think the biggest catalyst for digital transformation right now and in the coming years will be generative AI. Everyone's talking about OpenAI and ChatGPT, and it certainly is a very exciting, albeit controversial development that is bursting with potential impactful possibilities. Today, our well-intentioned operational automation efforts are hampered by the inherent technical limitations that we can only temporarily band-aid with piecemeal tools and processes. It's like we're just treading water in an ever-expanding digital ocean that has always been beyond our human capabilities to effectively control. With the exponential developments in generative AI and the pace of innovation, it's no longer a stretch to see how we'll soon leap forward past these current constraints we have, trying to manage the complexity of our modern digital environments and the volume, velocity, and variety of our data. What I can foresee is the federation of a third-party pre-trained LLMs, or large language models, with self-hosting open source real-time data models on neural subnetworks, selectively providing cost-effective, fine-tuned generative AI with reinforced learning capabilities for corporate operational consumption. Well, I'm sure that sounded like a mouthful. Just imagine applying tech to operations that is akin to, say, autopilot in vehicles. We'll finally realize and accelerate towards fully automated corporate cognitive ecosystems that offer personalized concierge customer services and self-sustaining autonomous operations. Of course, ServiceNow certainly must be looking at how it can benefit from these generative AI advancements, but it also creates a large opportunity vacuum for newcomers to possibly disrupt current service management and workflow automation industry. Not unlike what ServiceNow did a decade ago, only now more rapidly and comprehensively. So just like the recent activities from Microsoft, Salesforce, Amazon, and Google, to name a few, I anticipate a flood of new tools, capabilities, and companies rushing to market to fill that void and make current tech all but obsolete.
Comprehensive answer, John. A lot of nuggets within that. Final question for you. Advice to your younger self 10 years ago and to future ServiceNow users, and you share the example of one implementation within 6 months, and that sounded really, really smooth, but I'm sure you probably had some challenges along the way that you probably learned from.
Sure. Yeah, my advice to my younger self would be to not take things so seriously. Don't try to do too much, and don't worry about always trying to get it right. Of course, establish a longer-term strategy, but focus day to day on what's possible, because there will always be many variables that can and will get in the way. So be aware of those potential blockers and ready to pivot when necessary, but remember what's really important and just enjoy the journey. There's a whole lot of truth in the saying, perfect is the enemy of progress. And my advice to future ServiceNow users is first, to embrace the configure, don't customize rule, or keep as close to out of the box as possible, and fully leverage the platform's capabilities. This decreases complexity, makes upgrades easier and faster, and allows organizations to focus on implementing higher level features and functionality. So I would recommend, when possible, changing a company's convoluted historical processes to fit ServiceNow's best practices rather than the other way around. In other words, you're going to pay for it either way, so clean up the organization's mess before adding to it and possibly making it worse. Next, I'd establish and maintain an accurate CMDB. This will make initial deployments smoother, processes simpler, more complete, and easier to automate, and ultimately provide AI with good, clean training input for its models. I am, however, eagerly anticipating this coming AI revolution will soon make any manual building and managing of CMDBs no longer necessary, because getting a CMDB right can be difficult, to say the least. And finally, don't get complacent with your knowledge, skills, and career. As we all can see, technology changes very quickly, and you don't want to be left behind. So do whatever it takes. Read, take classes, find a mentor, heck, go ask ChatGPT, and stay ahead of that next wave.
John, thank you very much for your thoughts there. I really love them, particularly get your CMD right. It's funny, you get that strong foundation that you can really build from there, and try to clean up the mess before you kind of start off is good, because you may try to add different elements to it, but unless those things are reset and you've got a strong foundation, it's going to be very challenging road ahead.
Yeah, as I said, it's all data and workflow, and if the data is correct, the workflow is much easier. And trying to build all the elements, data elements, and the relationships and dependencies within a CMDB has always been challenging throughout my career, especially because of the rate of change. So again, hoping that AI will take all of that burden off of me in the future, and all of us in the future, and build these CMDBs for us and maintain them.
John DeWysocki, thank you very much for your time today.
Appreciate it, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the All This podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.allthis.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.